specific fit-based argument or not, the current chatter around the draft makes it seem like Fields will fall past at least pick 3 when a lot of us had him as the second-best quarterback available. So some have wondered if he's being compared to other Ohio State quarterbacks. Fields was actually asked about this by the Washington Post. He said, "I think I'm different than those guys. I know my work ethic is unmatched, and just my dedication and passion to wanting to be great is just another level." He went on to say, "In terms of the past quarterbacks, I can't control that. The only similarity that me and those guys have is that we wore the same uniform. So if they want to say that, then that's on them. I'm going to focus on myself and focus on continuing to get better in every aspect of the game." If you watched him yesterday at his pro day, if you watched him during his season at Ohio State, especially this past season, you saw the leadership on display, and you saw a guy that really can command an offense and look out for his receivers throughout all of it, which are important things at the next level. So Dan Graziano joining us now. You've talked to some executives around the league. Is there a legit concern about Fields following in the footsteps of former Buckeyes quarterbacks?
No, I don't hear that, Laura. And in fact, I've asked that question directly. You know, does the idea that the Ohio State quarterbacks haven't really found success in the league work against him? And I've been told no. I mean, they're assessing. I've been told he's a different guy than some of those other guys. So he's being evaluated on his own merits, as he should be. I think when you hear concerns, a lot of times they're about inconsistencies with mechanics and maybe some issues he might have had when facing pressure. But you know, it's nitpick season, right? I mean, this guy's still going to almost certainly be a top 6 or 8 or certainly 10 pick. Just because he's not going to be 1 or 2, it doesn't look like, isn't necessarily a significant knock on him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is always the season. It seems we have to answer a ton of questions about certain players, about certain quarterbacks. And, you know, we had the questions about Lamar Jackson. They had the questions about Cam Newton. And now those questions seem to be about Justin Fields here. But when you look at his body of work, when you look at the totality of his film, he was highly successful. He was a winner in college. He was a guy who went out and fought when he was injured to beat Clemson in the semifinal. And so I think when you think about the measurables, you look at the physicality, you look at the physical tools, he obviously has everything there. I think at the top of this draft, when you look at those things, but also the productivity was there in college as well. And all he can do is continue to show well, is continue to ball. And if he does those things, then you get a great player. I want him to go to San Francisco. I believe if he does, he's an all-pro. I believe he's a guy that wins a Super Bowl. And much of this talk that we have right now about Justin Fields goes away.
If Justin Fields falls past 4th at the NFL draft, we as an NFL community have failed. All right, let me say that, okay? If he falls past 4, we have, as an NFL community, has failed. Number one, if you hear someone say that Justin Fields can't get through number 1 of his progression, stop listening to that person and walk away. Hopefully we have dispelled that. The second thing I've heard is he really struggled against Indiana and Northwestern. Did you guys watch the same games as I did? Because he had like 2 bad plays against Indy. Look at this ball to the sideline. That's a rip. Now, Indiana's defense is crazy exotic. Tons of unique pressures and coverages. So, yeah, there was an interception down the middle of the field late. Or there was a play where he scrambles around and the ball floats up and it becomes interception. That's fair. That's not a bad game. Those are 2 or 3 bad plays. Still threw for 300 yards. Northwestern against the number 1 defense in college football. There's an RPO. It's not there. Just tuck it and use the 4.4 speed. You guys tell me if you like that throw, because it's absolutely spectacular to the field. And then he could be a runner down. No, listen, 1-hand interception. That ball's 3 inches off from a touchdown. Great play by the corner. Holding on to it a little bit leads to a sack. So those are like, there's a difference between playing bad against certain teams and having 4 or 5 bad plays over the course of those 2 games. Now, I wanted to point out Indiana and Northwestern for everybody at home because you guys are probably hearing Indiana and Northwestern not thinking great college football. Indiana was the number 5 ranked college football defense in America last year. Northwestern was number 1. And he didn't have his number 1 receiver.
Yes, raise your hand. You can go.
So here's also why Dan has to point out Indiana and Northwestern. Because when you look at his entire college career, those are the only 2 games you can point out.
Correct.
That's why Dan has to tell you what Indiana was. That's why Dan has to tell you what Northwestern was, because against everybody else, he was flat out balling.
Right.
And so when you think of Justin Fields and you look at the measurables, you look at the physical tools, but when you turn the film on, the dude flat out played. And you have to go back and watch it. You have to not nitpick just because you're falling in love with other people. Look at him for what he has done and for what he is.
Well, and remember, too, that he was without many of his weapons in a couple of those games. Olave didn't play, his big-time wide receiver, because of COVID protocol. Let's give Dan Graziano the last word here.
Well, I just think what's interesting is where does he go if he isn't San Francisco's pick, right? Does Atlanta want to use the pick on him, or does Atlanta end up trading the pick to someone who's in love with him? A Carolina, New England, a Denver. Those teams are still lurking and thinking about coming up for a quarterback after that run of the top three.
I love it, guys. We got so much more coming your way on the show, so make sure you stay with us right here. Trevor Lawrence appears to be a lock to go number.
Great matchup nightmare.
Matchup nightmare. I see Mike Evans meets Darren Waller.
Jackpot, baby!
He is the total package.
This is LeBron playing football.
There may not be a more exciting player in the NFL draft. Kyle Pitts, front and center at Florida's Pro Day this afternoon, and Jeremy Fowler in Gainesville for the workouts. Jeremy, did Pitts hurt his stock at all with his performance today?
Laura, greetings from a place you're very familiar with, Gainesville, Florida, where tight end Kyle Pitts was doing some freaky things on this field. A lot of scouts and execs I spoke to before today considered Pitts maybe the best overall player in this entire draft. He did not disappoint. He told me he got his weight up closer to 250 pounds and still wanted to show he could run in the 4.4s and the 40, catch passes all over the place, so that's a job well done. And Atlanta Falcons coach Arthur Smith, whose team picks 4th overall, was chatting up Pitts for a few minutes after the event. That's a good sign. Cincinnati Bengals head coach Zach Taylor, who picks 5th. Miami Dolphins coach Brian Flores, who picks 6th. They were both here to see Pitts as well. Now on to some other players. Quarterback Kyle Trask told me that he's hearing some of the critics say out there that he's immobile, that he can't throw on the run. So he designed his pro day throwing session today around moving to the left, right, up, down, and making throws with movement. He believes he did a great job in that regard, showed some things. He's widely considered probably a day 2 pick right now by a lot of people I talked to, maybe 2nd round. I'm hearing some buzz here that the New Orleans Saints like his game a great deal, so maybe that will lead to something. And lastly, the freakiest thing I saw today was wide receiver Kadarius Toney over here, broad jumping 10 feet 4 inches. That is not a great measurement, but the thing is, he decided to go way up in the air and out. You're supposed to go straight out, but he got so high, still went 10 feet. It was impressive and worthy of his first round billing. Back to you, Laura.
I love it, Jeremy. Let's get some quick reads on some of the future NFL players working out today at Florida and LSU. I want to continue with Kadarius Toney. He's a do-it-all player, right? He's electric with the ball in his hands. You see it next to me on this screen. He also takes blocking personally, which means he's even more of a weapon. And even with the talent of Pitts on that Florida offense, Toney was the player they knew he would score. They can't even put enough of a value on that, being able to score 6 at all times. That's what Kadarius Toney did for this Florida team. Dan, let's stay in Florida. What did you make of quarterback Kyle Trask?
Yeah, Kyle Trask is good. He's good athlete. He's good in the pocket. He's good with his arm strength, and he's good with his accuracy. The question for teams are going to be, or is, can you get him to be great at something? Can you get one of those traits to elevate and develop and go be great at something? If not, he's where he belongs as a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick in a developmental quarterback position.
LSU showcased a couple wide receivers at their pro day today. Matt Miller, what do you think of Chase and Marshall?
Oh, these are first rounders all the way, guys. And let's start with Jamar Chase, who, let's not forget, was the Biletnikoff Award winner as a sophomore at 19 years old as Joe Burrow's go-to target while surrounded by first rounder Justin Jefferson, who was pretty good in the NFL last year for the Minnesota Vikings, and Terrace Marshall, we're going to talk about in just a moment. Jamar Chase is the unquestioned #1 receiver in this class. We don't need to overthink it. And oh yeah, there's Terrace Marshall, who today also ran a mere 4.38 at 6'3", 210 pounds. LSU is now wide receiver, you guys. Marshall is a perfect fit. Late round 1, you think about the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills maybe, the Green Bay Packers if they finally draft a receiver in the first round. A lot of teams late round 1 who